of the Mayor and
This
Board of
meeting is being
Aldermen
recorded and
for
or transcribed.
Tuesday, September the 15th. Again, the air is broken. I apologize in advance for it being a little warm in here. We will try to move things along rather quickly. The first item on our agenda tonight is a moment of silence in remembrance of the victims of COVID-19 in our community. You know, I have said several times in our meetings that I fear that we have gotten to a point where we report numbers so often that they become just numbers. And we talk about the number of deaths and the number of positive cases and the number of people in ICU and all these things to where we kind of become just desensitized to the fact that we're talking about 39 members of our community that have passed away. And so I want us to take a minute to realize that, and that the decisions that we're making regarding this virus do have life-altering effects. Janice and I both have some information on some of the community members that we have lost over the past 6 months, and so we're going to share that with you before we have a moment of silence.
I want to speak for a minute about Kevin Malloy. Kevin passed away on April 16th. He was the third member of the Lafayette County community to die with COVID-19. He was an instructor of public speaking in the Department of Writing and Rhetoric at the university. His wife says that Kevin was a loving husband and father. He was kind and generous of spirit. He is survived by his wife, Rana, and daughter, Amanda, and he is really missed by his family and friends. And at NMRC, we lost 4 of the residents there, 4 men. 2 of the men have lived there since 1976, and the other 2 since 1980. So they were both members of our community for more than 40 years. And we know they are missed by the family and by the staff at NMRC who work with them every day.
We have had a total of 39 deaths in our community, 27 of which have come from members of the VA home, 4 at NMRC, 1 at another long-term care facility. So 32 of the 38 deaths in our community have been at long-term care facilities. I have a list of names that the families granted us permission to read tonight. So it's not all of the VA home people that have passed away, but it is 19 of those folks. So I'm just going to read their names and then we'll have a moment of silence. Henry Collier, Johnny Davis, Willie Eldridge, Billy Hamilton, Boyd Highfield, Norman House, Ben Jones, John Johnson, John Kidd, Louis Lucas, Lee Messer, Hugh Mills, Archie Osborne, Andrew Pates, Robert Perkins, Charles Reed, David Selvey, Alan Upchurch, and Clifton Wheeler. So if you will all bow in silence, please. Thank you. All right, at this time, the board will adopt our agenda for the meeting. We have quite a few changes to our agenda, so y'all bear with me as I'll give you time to mark these changes. We will be removing 3 items from our agenda. Number 18 and number 30 will both be removed. And then Braxton, did you have one that you wanted to remove?
Yes, can we please remove item 21? Our current vendor is working really hard to reach our goals, and I believe I'll have this very exciting news in the near future.
All right, thank you. So that's removing 18, 21, and 30. I'm going to ask you to make 2 additions. At 14A, I'm going to ask you to select a mayor pro tem to preside in place of a recused mayor and Mayor Pro Tem Bailey on agenda item 15. We will both have to recuse, and for the audience, Jason Bailey is the Mayor Pro Tem, and since we both have to recuse, we will need to elect a mayor pro tem to preside over that agenda item. I would ask you to also add 22A, which will be, you'll see at 22 that Chief McCutcheon will come forward to request that the Yoknapatawpha Arts Council use the City Hall Plaza for a projection and film screening. There's also a request to use the plaza September 25th and 26th, so we'll cover all of those during that agenda item. I'm going to ask you to move 2 items so that some of our guests don't have to stay for what looks to be a lengthy meeting. Let's move item 17, which is to adopt a proclamation for Direct Support Professionals Day. Let's move that to 8A, please. And let's move number 35, which is accepting a donation from First National Bank of Oxford. Let's move 35 to 9A. So we will let our guests not have to stay too long tonight. All right, so that is removing 8:21:30, adding a 14A and a 22A, moving 17 to 8A, moving 35 to 9A. Are there any other changes?
No, ma'am.
All right. Do I have a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, we've got quite a bit in our mayor's report tonight. We were honored to have Colonel Robert Hilliard here, the commander of the Vicksburg District of the Army Corps of Engineers. Just an hour ago, we signed a project partnership agreement for the Oxford Regional Water Supply and Treatment Project. You only have to look around to see the infrastructure projects that are going on above ground. The roads and the construction going in, you know, sometimes those underground projects aren't quite as visible, and we only hear people mention those underground projects when they're not working. So our growth certainly puts demands on our water infrastructure that's underground. Our water infrastructure is so critical, so we want to thank Senator Roger Wicker, Senator Cindy Hyde-Smith, and Congressman Trent Kelly for their support and their assistance in this effort. The Corps, through the Section 592 program and the signing of the agreement, like I said an hour ago, will be allowed to provide reimbursed grant funds to the City of Oxford for this project in the amount of $1.7 million. So it is such a needed grant for us and so appreciated. We will have a local match of 25%. The signing of this document is the beginning of that project, so we are excited to partner with the Corps of Engineers. It was an honor to have White House Coronavirus Response Coordinator Dr. Deborah Birx in Oxford on Saturday. She was here with epidemiologist Dr. Iram Zaidi, and the two are visiting college campuses across the nation. They are particularly visiting college campuses and with community leaders in areas that are seeing a large spread of the virus, which seems to be a trend on all college campuses and in college communities. Dr. Birx and Dr. Zaidi had been at University of Alabama the day before. They were headed to the University of Kentucky when we finished meeting Saturday evening. You know, Dr. Birx was incredible. I was amazed that, you know, she has this level of energy and this level of knowledge of each individual community. I mean, the statistics that she was spouting off and referring back to our Serving Oxford Safely plan that she had reviewed and the university's quarantine plans and things that I know the day before she was utilizing those same statistics at the University of Alabama and probably was about to read the ones for Kentucky on her way, but she was so well versed in everything. You know, she has led the U.S. effort to combat AIDS across the globe. So this is combating these types of spread is something she's very familiar with. And I'll have to say personally, it was re-energizing to visit with somebody that brought a lot of fresh ideas and suggestions. As I think probably everyone in this room could agree, we are experiencing a little bit of COVID fatigue. So it was great to meet with her. While most of Mississippi is seeing a decrease, Lafayette County is not. We continue to see relatively large increases that aren't surprising, as we just added 15,000 new residents over a week's time. We know that the highest percentage of spread across the nation is in that 18 to 24-year-old age bracket, and I'd say 99% of the folks that we just brought in fall into that category. So, you know, over the past few weeks, and we'll talk more about details once we get to our Serving Oxford Safely plan, but more than 60% of our new cases for the past month have been in that 18 to 24 age range. A month ago, we were seeing daily COVID counts at our local hospital in the 50s. They've been in the 20s all week this week. So our hospitalization rates are going down even as our numbers are going up. And that is what we continue to watch. You know, a list published in the New York Times, I've heard a lot of conversation about this, so I just want to spell this out for you a little bit. There was a list published in the New York Times, and it has caused a lot of concern across our community as Lafayette County, well, they said Oxford, but they used Lafayette County's population numbers. Oxford was number 3 on the fastest growth of cases per 100,000 people as of September the 10th. Dr. Burke shed a lot of light on this and gave me a lot of comfort, so I want to explain this to y'all and hope that it brings you the same comfort. You know, she said that there are small metros across the country, like Oxford, that have a 3-to-1 or 4-to-1 community member to student ratio. So with approximately 50,000 residents in Lafayette County and another 15,000 students, you know, the large case increases in our student population when they look at that per 100,000 shoots up rapidly. She was comparing us to other schools. Let's say Georgetown. Georgetown has about the same number of students, but they are in a metro of 1.5 million. So when they have the same 1,000 case increase that we have, it's not a blip on their radar. And so, you know, she was saying the number of cases that we are seeing on a 15 to 18,000 person campus are what they're seeing across the nation. It's not different here. The spread is the same in both of those settings. And she also encouraged us to work through our problems. She said, I think you've got a great plan in place. You know, different people were saying, what's the threshold? What is the number that you get to that you close things? What is our threshold for closing the school or closing down businesses or what have you? And she said, I don't believe that that's what we look to anymore. We look to balancing our healthcare system and looking at hospitalizations, and we now have the experience of knowing what was theoretical in February to April, when they were saying, wear masks, social distance, and wash your hands. It looked theoretically on paper like that would work. Now we have proof that it does. And so, you know, the places that were in the red zone have implemented these measures and seen their numbers go down. So her advice was to keep on keeping on. She said that across, you know, this is just telling you this because it's what we have known in our community. She said that they are finding that the majority of community spread is happening in backyard barbecues, birthday parties, weddings, and family gatherings. It's not happening in bars and restaurants, is what her take was. She said that, you know, it was so interesting to her, and I thought it was funny when she said it. She said, it's so interesting to me that people believe that the people that live next door to them and their families couldn't possibly have COVID. You know, I mean, they feel perfectly comfortable having their whole street over for a backyard barbecue, or just because they're related, even though they live in different places and practice different safety measures. I mean, they're my family. So she said, you know, maybe think about the fact that yes, indeed, your family member could have it. Dr. Burke's message of moving through, I thought, was a great one. She said that people forget that there's a public and public health, and we have to work with the public where they are, considering what they are willing to do. And I think that's where we are now in moving forward. Bart and I met with our Northern District Transportation Commissioner, John Caldwell, last week to talk about ways to move the Highway 7 project forward, to consider putting together maybe a North Mississippi Corridor Regional Transportation Commission, to get a group together to try to seek federal funds to complement Mississippi Department of Transportation funds to hopefully move the 4-laning of Highway 7 up the priority list. It was, you know, we've had that conversation numerous times, and we just try to keep that on the radar and find creative ways for funding, and we'll continue to push that. I want to thank Arleta and RSVP for a wonderful event on September the 11th. They had lots of volunteers there handing out meals, and recognized all of our first responders on a day that we remember so many first responders that we lost. A fun project that I mentioned at our last meeting, the shelter show. If any of you have driven past the bus stops, we have 2 now that have great artwork. There's the one by the skate park that Sarah Frances Hardy did the artwork for. One this week in front of Northwest Community College on Belt Boulevard, and Frank Estrada did the art for that. It's a nurse superhero. And we will have a third on this Friday, that this installation will be on West Jackson Avenue, kind of in front of Rice and Spice. So y'all look for that one. That was a very long mayor's report, but we have had a whole lot going on. So thank y'all for bearing with me. I will ask you now to authorize the approval of the minutes of the regular meeting on September the 1st and the special meeting on September the 8th.
I move we approve the minutes.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Ask you to authorize the approval of accounts for all city departments.
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? Ask you to consider the consent agenda, letters A through J.
Move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, request permission to approve and authorize the mayor to sign a contract with MDOT for the City of Oxford City County Transit Grant. Arleta?
I think folks said everything was fine with it, so.
All right,
But in the past, it always asked for it to be signed by another entity, and I always said, if we're gonna approve it, it needs to be signed by us, and this one has us.
all right. Is there a motion to allow me to sign the contract with MDOT?
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Okay, at this time, we will move item number 17 up. I think that we do have some people from NMRC here. If they want to come up to the front, we will adopt a proclamation for Direct Support Professionals Day. Y'all, come on up here to the front. Hey there, yeah, just file on in so you can have plenty of room. We're just so excited y'all are here. I wish I could just come hug all of you, because I know that it is amazing the work that, I'll hug you at Larson's when I see you next time in produce. We pass each other in produce like 3 times a week. I do want you to know how much your community appreciates the work that you're doing, the people that you're caring for, the people that you're loving on that need to be loved on. And I can't imagine how hard it is and how frustrating it gets and how exhausted you are. But I just want you to know that your community appreciates you. So that you all know, well, Dr. Hales is not up here. Is Edie still here? She had to leave, okay. Then we may have one person whose name I don't have. Tamara Webb, Assistant Director of NMRC. Catherine Brazier, Interim Director, Interim Resident Living Director. Alan Rooker, Community Transit Services Director. Jacova Jenkins, Human Resources. Hunter Haney, Director of HR. And Shay, what is your position?
I'm the volunteer coordinator in public information.
All right, Volunteer Coordinator in Public Information. That's a lot in that role. Okay, I'm going to read a proclamation declaring Direct Support Professionals Recognition Week. Whereas direct support professionals enhance the abilities and promote the independence of persons with intellectual and developmental disabilities, and whereas direct support professionals are integral to providing quality care and comprehensive services with dignity and respect for the well-being of individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities of all ages, and whereas direct support professionals provide essential support to help keep individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities connected to their families, friends, and their home communities. DSPs further enable people with intellectual and developmental disabilities to live and to contribute more successfully to society at large. And whereas, among other duties, direct support professionals recognize and abide by the importance of equal protections, individual rights, social interactions, meaningful experiences, and active treatment, which fosters confidence and trusted relationships. And whereas direct support professionals help individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities with the most basic daily needs, which include a wide range of physical, social, and emotional support. Physical support, such as assistance with personal grooming, social support, such as communication training, and emotional support, such as teaching better coping strategies, are just a few examples. DSPs further teach employment skills, money management, and assist with necessary transportation. And whereas direct support professionals, also referenced as direct care workers, are the essential frontline providers of long-term supports and services. DSPs spend the highest percentage of the day supporting, teaching, training, coaching, and motivating. Thus, DSPs not only inspire a greater sense of happiness for people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, but also a higher level of confidence and independence, which can lead to additional service options of their choice and in their least restrictive setting. Therefore, I, Robin Tannehill, Mayor of the City of Oxford, do hereby proclaim September the 13th through the 19th of 2020 to be Direct Support Professionals Recognition Week. I encourage the City of Oxford to recognize and appreciate the dedication and contributions of these providers to enhancing the lives of their clients. And I do hope that you get a big thank you from everybody you pass, and that this is a week that you know that your community loves and appreciates you. Thank you all. Thank you. All right, thank y'all. I'll see you soon. All right, and now at...
We need a motion.
Oh, we do need a motion to adopt that proclamation, yes.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you, Mark. Consider a request to clean and mark the trails at Cedar Oaks as an Eagle Scout project. Wes Estes, come on up.
It's my pleasure to introduce Wes, who is got a pretty exciting project he wants to do.
Awesome. We're excited to hear about it. Feel free to just step right up to that microphone so people can hear you that are watching online. Thank you. All right, Wes, we'll let you take it away.
All right. My name's Wes Estes, and I am currently a Life Scout at Troop 144, and I am required to do a community project to get my scout rank Eagle Scout. And what I propose is that I would want to work on the Cedar Oaks Trail during the winter months and spring, early spring. And on the third page, third and fourth page, I have some pictures of the current state of the trail. And the first one, you can see a bench covered in plants and everything. And there's almost no trail left in some areas. And in the last picture, the third one, you can see a trail which is overgrown. And I was wondering if I could help out with that for my Eagle Scout project.
Well, Wes, we would love it. We clearly need you. These pictures, are you
Yeah.
kidding me? Will we let you? We should beg you. This looks great.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for choosing a project that the whole community can enjoy.
Thank you.
I think it's a great idea, Mayor. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Wes, is there anything else that you want to say? Didn't mean to
Yes.
cut you off. Keep going.
My proposal is that I would need someone to bush hog or mow the existing trail, which I would either need to raise money or recruit a volunteer to do. And I would use my troop to help clean out the area after it is bush hogged or mowed. After that, we would need to line the trails with either logs or old telephone poles to line the trail to help it. And for the last part, we would need to get gravel to help plants not grow on the trail.
Right.
And I believe that's all I have.
Well, I think it sounds like a wonderful project, and we so appreciate all that you and all the Eagle Scouts across our community have done to improve different corners of our community over the years. And we have a motion and a second and a vote to certainly allow you to do this project. And we will also volunteer city forces to do some bush hogging for you.
Thank you.
Okay, so you can just coordinate that through our office.
All right.
And we will look forward to seeing your progress.
Thank you.
Thank you, Wes. Good luck to you. All right, and now we will move number 35 up to 9A. Number 35 is accept a donation from First National Bank of Oxford to assist in defraying the cost for licenses for the use of municipal property. You wanna come up, Johnny? We have Johnny Barrett of First National Bank here with us tonight, and he is making a generous contribution. I'll let you speak if you'd like to.
Yes, we just, we want to assist in that effort for outdoor dining on the square, and we're looking for any number of ways to help, and we decided to put our money where our mouth is. So there are 25 miles or so over at the bank, and that'll help us eat on the square and help a lot of other folks eat on the square, so we want to contribute this.
Check for $1 billion.
So we want to help in some small way, so.
Well, we thank you. It's not a small way, and on behalf of our restaurants and our community, we thank you. As the public has heard us discuss, we are looking for ways to provide outdoor dining. We understand that our state statute prevents us from donating that space, so we are having to lease that space to our restaurants. And so this contribution from First National Bank will be taken off the top of what those restaurants have to pay, and we hope that other citizens across the community will be inspired by First National Bank's generosity and help us do this as well. So thank you, Johnny, and thank you, First National Bank.
Sure. And
We
who
appreciate
gets
you.
the check?
You can give it to Ashley. She's the money person. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Johnny.
All right, do we need a motion to accept that donation?
So moved. Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Great, thank you. And a presentation about loft grants through the Create Foundation for local businesses experiencing financial difficulties due to COVID-19. We've got Steve Downing here and Alan Kerr with him, so y'all come on up to the podium.
Got some.
You can hand them to Keisha and we'll pass them around.
Great. All right. Mayor, board, thanks for your time today. Thanks for having us here. First, a bit of good news, we're not here to ask you for anything. So we'll lead off with that. We've got a newly formed charity here that as of right now is called the Oxford Relief Fund. It's Oxford Lafayette Relief Fund. And this was created through a partnership with the Oxford Lafayette County Economic Development Foundation, the Lafayette Oxford Foundation for Tomorrow, Mississippi Small Business Development Center, and the I can never say that, but Yaknapwa Arts Council. Thank you. Many local business owners and volunteers are dedicating their time to the steering committee to crank this up. The concept behind this is, certain segments of the economy and businesses are more impacted by COVID than other segments are. And so the concept here is that this is with partnership of these groups that I just mentioned, business owners that are doing okay or doing well, and individuals want to give back and help the folks that quite frankly things are out of their hands as far as, if you can't have but a half full restaurant, you can't have but a half full restaurant. The fiscal agent for the fund is the Create Foundation, and you can go to the Loft website and read all about them you want, but basically what we're doing here is we're not recreating the wheel, and we're using their technology and their backbone in order to run the program here. So the mission of the Oxford Relief Fund is to help small local businesses within Lafayette County, Mississippi, recover from the extended shutdown and excessive financial burden caused by COVID-19. The Oxford Relief Fund will provide grants to businesses who meet specific criteria and can demonstrate a business disruption caused by the pandemic. The fund will grant up to $2,000 to qualifying applicants. So we're going what I would call small out of the gate. As you all know, it's when you do something the first time, it's a good idea to not throw everything at it and just go in full bore. And so this is a little bit of a test, but it's going to be a rolling fund. So our goal for the first run of this is to raise $50,000, and we will give applicants up to 25 applicants, $2,000 apiece. We want this to grow. We want this to be bigger grants to help more. But we need to do this the right way to start with. We are almost ready to go. We're working a few technical issues out, but we do hope that we will be able to have applicants fill out the application through the website next week sometime. And then 30 days after whenever we open that up, we will announce the first, or we'll close it out, and then very soon we will announce the first recipients.
Great.
Anybody that is eligible by the criteria here, and that's those bullet points down on the front page that I gave you. Anybody that is eligible but didn't get picked in that first round will immediately roll to the second round. So, our purpose here today is to make you aware of what we think is a very needed and a very wonderful charitable endeavor. And so we'd like to have your awareness of it and your blessing of it. And we're not going to publish anything in the paper right now. We're waiting until it is actually open for applicants, which we think will be next week. And so just keep an eye on that as far as the website goes. And then when you see the article in the paper, you know we're live and kicking,
ready
so
to
to
go.
speak.
Can I have one thing?
Yeah, go for it.
Yes, please.
The only thing I'd like to add is that if you have anybody who you know is in need, whenever you do see this coming out, it's going to be promoted through the Chamber of Commerce and Economic Development Foundation website and social media. Please direct people to it, as well as those who are willing to donate to this cause. We hope $50,000 is just the beginning. The only other thing I want to add, we know that $2,000 is not a lot right now, but it can make payroll. It can make an inventory dent. It can help relieve that revenue shortfall. We're going to follow this up with direct assistance to the Small Business Development Center through our office at the Economic Development Foundation, so we're also giving smart money, not just money, to this fund. And because we believe that the business assistance and the coaching that could be coming with this is just as important. So just know that this is not just a little bit of money to help them in the bridge. It is, but this is going to go a lot further than that. So if anybody is in need, please let them know that we're here.
Well, this is great, and I think about First National Bank making a contribution, then a Boy Scout trying to figure out how to make his community get better, followed by a group trying to help our small businesses. That's what makes Oxford such a great place, is people that want to leave it better than they found it and that take care of each other. So thank you so much for being part of the solution. And we appreciate it.
We're also, something that came up on our call today is this will hopefully, because it's through the Loft website, it's an offshoot of that. We don't think that a lot of business owners are aware of what's available to them through some of these charitable organizations that are lifted above. And so we're hoping too that they can use their experience here to find out about new avenues and leverage that also. But we certainly thank you for your time today, and
we thank you for your investment of time and money in this project. Let us know if we can help.
We will do.
Thank y'all. All right, next will be our quarterly update from Mississippi Critters. Jen Peterman is here, I know, to do that. And Ainsley Smith.
Hello, everyone.
Hello. You may have to pull that microphone down so that the people that are listening online can hear you well. Thank you.
And us vertically challenged people.
I feel your pain there, Jim.
Yeah. We're here for our quarterly report. I will start with Mississippi Critters Animal Control Report. Meredith is, we've had, I don't know if you've seen on Facebook, we've had a goat turned into us, and he is having some issues, so they are the vet right now. But as far as her report goes, May 2020, city calls were 43, county calls were 15, other calls 4, OPD calls 3, dogs picked up 3, cats picked up 2, animal control returned to owner animals 2, verbal warnings 2, written warnings 2, animal cruelty cases 0. June 2020, city calls 72, county calls 12, other calls 2, OPD calls 2, dogs picked up 9, cats picked up 4, Animal control returned to owners, 4. Verbal warnings, 3. Written warnings, 6. Animal cruelty cases, 1. July 2020, city calls 67, county calls 11, other calls 3, OPD calls 4, dogs picked up 15, cats picked up 1, animal control returned to owner 7, verbal warnings 3, written warnings 2, animal cruelty cases 0. And August 2020, city calls 60, county calls 5, other calls 0, OPD calls 1, dogs picked up 1, cats picked up 0, animal control returned to owner 0, verbal warnings 1, written warnings 1, and animal cruelty cases 0. Our financial reports, I think you have a copy of all those. We're
We
still
do.
in good standing. If you have any questions, feel free to contact me. As far as our intake and output at the shelter for this quarter, I'll just hit some of the high points. In May and June, those were some of our highest months as far as intake at 190 and 209. But I'm also happy to report those were our 2 highest months in transferred animals at 142 and 148. And then July hit. We were greatly affected by COVID and our opportunities to transport animals. They just pretty
I'm
much
sure.
shut down everything. So there's been a learning curve. Our transports went down to 34 and 28 respectively for August. Also, our animal intakes have gone down, thankfully, during those 2 months as well. During this quarter, we've had lots of wonderful things happen. We've had some COVID relief grants from Tito's Vodka and the Oxford Lafayette Rotary Club. We've had our 4th of July poker run out at Sardis Lake. We had 20 boats and over 50 participants, and it was a huge success. We've had our Pets to the Rescue virtual 5K. That was nationwide virtual 5K. 177 shelters took part in it across the nation, and we came in second as participants. We had our Freedom Run, and of course it had to be virtual this year. That's always one of our highlights of the year, was our 4th of July 5K and Freedom Fun Run. So it took place all through July. We had a great amount of participation. We're looking forward to next year where hopefully it can be held on the 4th again. We're excited to announce that in August we picked back up with our spay and neuter program with Mississippi State University. That's the sophomore surgery rounds where they come and pick up animals, take them down, they stay for about 4 days, and then come back to us spayed, neutered, and medically treated for any small things. And we've had our first adoption at Mississippi State through that program. And lastly, we're still trying to navigate fundraising and adoptions and animal transports in the COVID landscape. It has had a big learning curve for us. And we've done small things, food drives, and we've kind of come back to basics. We do $5 Fridays where we have an animal that's really in need, and we just ask for $5 from anybody who's willing to donate. But I have to say I'm in awe of the staff and how they have stepped up to the plate for all of this. Everything at the shelter now takes place basically outside, and you can imagine in the 100-degree heat with a dog that maybe doesn't want to mind, and you're trying to show the best qualities of that dog to someone who's thinking about adopting, and it doesn't always go as well as you had hoped. So I have to say, my hats are off to them, and we, as always, thank you for your support.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on any of their reports? Not, then we will move to request permission to renew the annual contract with Mississippi Critters for animal control and shelter services for FY 2021.
I distributed the new contract, I think, to all the aldermen. It's not very many changes. The one change is that their reports to us now are quarterly rather than bi-monthly. And the other change is the renewal of the contract. Rather than an annual renewal, we have put in here that the contract will renew automatically. So they don't have to come every year. There is a provision in there can do so with 30 days' notice. And the other is that the authority of one board cannot bind subsequent boards. So when there's another board here in July, if they want to make any changes, they have the ability to do that. I can't imagine anybody would want to rock the boat right now because you folks are doing a great job. You
Thank
really are.
you. We appreciate it.
We appreciate it. And you all know Ainsley. Ainsley is the president of the board. He runs good board meetings. They had one last night, which was very productive.
Thank you.
And thank you all for everything you're doing.
Does anybody have any questions? All right, then we would need a motion to renew this annual contract.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank you, Ainsley, thank you, Jim, for all the hard work that you're putting in.
Thank you all.
So here we are on September the 15th, and we are already getting lots of phone calls and different things, wanting to know what we're going to do about Halloween and trick-or-treating. Jimmy Allgood has put together a list of recommendations. You know, I would say to you all that I believe that, and certainly any board member can change this, I believe that our responsibility as city leaders would be to give suggestions for how to trick or treat in a safe fashion. And so Jimmy has researched what other communities, I don't know if y'all have seen the news, but not lots, that's an exaggeration, numerous community cities have said that there will be no trick-or-treating. And I'm not sure what ghosts are gonna come and haunt those people's homes that voted that way, but it ain't gonna be my house. So, but I do think that it is our responsibility to give some good, safe guidelines for folks to trick-or-treat. So I've asked Jimmy to present these to you all. You've got a copy of it, just to kind of talk through, and then you all may have different ideas of how to address Halloween and trick-or-treating. I've heard from several churches that say that they're going to try to encourage the trunk-or-treating, parking in a parking lot, and kids going from either truck bed to truck bed or car to car to trick-or-treat rather than going to people's houses. But I think Jimmy has put together a good list that if you all approve, we will put on the website and encourage people to follow these guidelines. And just because Jimmy is awesome, he has divided it into two categories, for the tricksters and for the treaters. So there you go.
Yeah, it kind of wanted to make it fun. I mean, this is unique times for Halloween and
That's
everything,
right.
and there's not a whole lot of guidance nationwide. Some congressmen have asked the CDC to come up with some guidelines, but CDC has yet to come out with guidelines for it. So a lot of communities are kind of flying on their own. And just doing some research online, this is pretty much the basic guidelines from coast to coast, what communities have come up with. If you want to go through each item, or
Well, I think everybody can just kind of glance through it. They've had a copy, but you know.
Yes, we'll put a copy on our website, and also I have been contacted by a couple of churches about trunk or treat. There's going to be some of those events, so there's some non-traditional things that they could do instead of the house to house to keep it safe, like the trunk or treat. And for anybody that has recommended or has questions, please give my office a call and everything, and I can help guide you to a safer type event.
You know, it's small things for the public that's not seeing this list. Things like, don't let every kid that comes to your front door stick their hand down in that candy bowl. Whoever is handing out candy, you hand it to each person. Don't let 5,000 little grubby hands put their hands in that,
right.
that bowl. And take hand sanitizer with you, and wear a mask, which everybody likes to do on Halloween anyway, and maintain social distances to the kids that are already at the front door in front of you. It seems like really, common sense things, but I do think that we should put out a list of recommended guidelines. Does anybody have any questions or concerns about these, or anybody else have a different idea for how to approach Halloween?
And the three key things on this is what we're doing now. It's wear a mask, even with a costume, make sure a mask is incorporated into the costume, do your social distancing, and use your hand sanitizer. So it's the three key items are built into these.
Jimmy, I think you've just done a great job putting this together. and I make a motion that we put it on the website.
Thank you.
Awesome. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Thank you, Jimmy. All right, consider a request from Griffin Tanner to waive a plumbing code requirement related to the number of restrooms in an area. Chris Carter.
Mayor,
Yes, ma'am.
when I read this, item, I really was confused because I didn't know what the space looked like. So I got planning to, make a runoff the floor plan.
Uh-huh.
Which is right there, I think.
Okay.
Everybody needs to.
Michael, can you do the deal? I don't even know what to call it. Make it come on the,
And the
do
other,
that magic and make it go on the screen.
the other thing that I needed to know is the capacity of this space. It's 8,000 square feet, and the capacity is 1,100. So that will help us figure out how many bathrooms are needed.
The chiller just came back on, so hopefully it'll cool down in a second.
Well, Chris, you can explain this better than I can as far as where the bathrooms are now.
Yes, ma'am.
Also, another question I have, can people get from this outdoor space inside?
No.
Okay.
This is adjunct to the Harrison's Bar, but it's not actually part of Harrison's Bar, as I understand it.
So it's, yeah.
The bathrooms are here. There's 6 individual toilet rooms. He's got a little bar right here, with a little pretty little barbecue pit proposed to go in. The rest of this is all just a turf, open turf area. The plumbing code that we've got adopted requires him to provide 7 women's toilets, 4 men's toilets. Approximately 8,000 square feet of turf. The current design proposes 6 separate restrooms. Each one's got a toilet and its own lavatory, one of which being ADA accessible. Now, based on 8,000 square feet, the least restrictive occupant load that we can assign per our code tabulations is 534 people. That's the least restrictive. That's typically what we would assign to a venue that had tables and chairs throughout. The more restrictive, which would actually be probably more representative of what Mr. Tanner's gonna have, would be 1,143 occupant load. So based on that, his 534 count requires 11 total fixtures, toilets. They chose to do them in separate rooms as I think they said it was due to the COVID, that it's now an architectural feature to separate everything and have individual rooms. Based on doing that, 50% of those are required to be ADA accessible. So current design, he'd have to have at least 3 of those ADA accessible, if
How many right now are ADA accessible?
1. If we went and, as Ms. Antonell said, we can increase the occupant load. I talked with the fire marshal earlier today about this, just to make sure that my numbers were correct. He said he would assign him 2 separate occupant loads, one being the 534. If he had tables and stuff out there, no tables and chairs out there, the 1143 would be the accurate load that he would be restricted to. Based on that, 1,143, our plumbing code would require him to have 13 women's fixtures and 8 men's fixtures. Now, he can gang them all into one bathroom. They just chose to do them as separate toilet rooms, again, for the COVID stuff.
I like separate rooms better for safety and security
Right,
as
yeah.
much as COVID, for sure, but. Okay, board, what are your thoughts?
My thought is, with the separation, times that we're in, and I think it's probably a smart thing to do. And having to have that separation takes up, a lot of space where you could just put urinal, stall. I think the design, I like it. So I would make a motion that we approve.
That we approved just 6 toilets?
Six individual toilets.
When
There are actually 6 individual bathrooms.
Right. Like, I don't have a problem with people waiting as much. I mean, then I'd rather them wait than I would them all be standing in there, with all the different urinals.
I mean, you put
Or stalls.
A lot of stuff happens in bathrooms in bars. That's just the reality of it. You're doing individual stalls like that, I think it's a little bit safer.
I second Jason's motion.
And I have a question, does the individual, having the individual bathrooms make a difference in the number that is required?
No, the only difference it makes would be for the ADA requirements. When you have the individual bathrooms, the ADA guidelines call for 50% to be accessible, whereas if you were to gang them in one big room and have a bunch of toilets and urinals in one room, you can get by with basically one accessible stall.
Well, I think that
Then we need to go, 3, or at least 2 handicap.
then they're gonna need more than six stalls. And then they're required to have 11 if we're using the 500 and something capacity.
Yes, ma'am.
Using the 1100, it's 13 women's
13 and 8.
That's a lot. That's absolutely not needed. But I think they need more than 6, maybe not 11, but maybe 4 more, 10. Well, anyway, I know that there's a motion on the floor.
Jason, do you want to amend your motion based on ADA or no?
Yeah, I'd say, we go with 6 and have 2 ADAs, probably one on each end.
John, do you still second that
Yeah, I
motion?
still second.
All right, is there any other discussion before we vote? All right, so that is a motion and a second to allow 6 restrooms, changing there to be at least one more ADA restroom. So all in favor? Those opposed? All right, so the motion passes. It is my understanding that number 15 has been resolved.
Yes, ma'am. Late this afternoon, it was taken care of.
Okay, so then 14A and 15 can be removed from the agenda. All right. Thank you, Chris.
Thank y'all.
Next is discuss the current Serving Oxford Safely plan. We'll get Jimmy to come up and give y'all some numbers, as we always do, before we tackle our Serving Oxford Safely. And then I've got some additional data, and we'll see what changes need to be made.
What you see on the screen is our report from the state for the week ending 9/12. And what it does is the numbers in white inside the columns right there are the number of cases that we actually had for the past 4 weeks, going back 4 weeks. 4 weeks ago, 97 cases, and then you can work your way up to last week right there, and you can see our cases peaked, and then now they're trending back down. On the next, this is for last week, how the cases break down. We had a total of, this is based on 1,891 cases. As you can see, we're still at 53.7% of the cases fall within that 18 to 29-year-old age group. Right there, so based on what the state health department is telling us, and also the data that we're seeing, it is that age group where most of our cases are coming out of. For today, the state had 505 cases with 28 new deaths. Lafayette County had a total of, had 17 new cases today, for a total of 1,975 cases. We had 0 new deaths. As of today, we have 219 active cases. Our R factor for the state is at 0.88, which tells us that the case spread is still going down, decreasing. We're number 4 in the nation this week on that. And
Based on per capita.
based on per capita, that's
Is
correct.
very deceiving.
After what Dr. Burks told the
Yeah,
mayor and
it's
everything.
very deceiving.
Yes, very deceiving, yes. And right now, as the mayor had stated earlier, we've had a total of 39 deaths.
Yep, so Dr. Dobbs sent me a chart right before the meeting, and it is our Lafayette County COVID-19 cases by event date through September the 13th. And so it is a chart, much like the first one that Jimmy showed, which is from March through now. Our highest increase came on August the 26th. We had 72 new cases on that day. 61 were between 18 and 24 years old. So 61 of the 72 that day were between 18 and 24. For the past 2 weeks, they gave me a chart. There were 319 total cases on this chart. 205 of those, or 65%, were between 18 and 24. So as we have said, and continues to be the case, our increases are coming in that 18 to 24-year-old age group. As of yesterday, the hospital information did not get updated today, but as of yesterday, as I've told you all, we've got 181 total staffed beds. Yesterday, there were 25 patients at the hospital that were COVID related. Remember, I told you a month ago, it was in the 50s every day. For the past, all of last week, it was in the 20s. Last week when we met, it was at 29. Today, it's 25. That continues to fluctuate. So there were 38 available beds yesterday at the hospital. Total ICU beds, we have a total of 25 ICU beds. 5 of those right now are occupied by COVID patients, and there are 7 available beds as of yesterday. So our hospital availability of beds, of ICU and regular beds, is still looking good, which you all know is what we focus on. And Dr. Burks reiterated that she was talking to the university about, now that you've gotten students here, you don't close down, because then those students are untethered. You've got 15,000 people living in the community without commitments to code of conduct and to things like that, that it's going to be important for the university to work through those issues. And I think the university is very committed to that. So I think, Jimmy, are there any other data points?
Just one other thing, on the long-term care facilities, they need to be commended, because we have several in our community. And they have had outbreaks in them, and they have managed to put those outbreaks in check by doing the right procedures and everything. And if you notice, in most communities where their highest death rate is, it's in the long-term care facilities.
Yeah. So their diligence is really...
It has paid off.
And I'm putting you on the spot here, but the number that we talked about earlier today, the number of patients that we knew were positive at the VA home versus the number of deaths, I believe that as many recovered, more recovered than passed away, which was encouraging.
I mean,
there are many that are in really poor states of health that are getting it and recovering. So it's not just a death sentence. If
they had
find out
59
have it.
cases at that location, and with the 27 fatalities. But the regional center had 67 cases and only 4 fatalities.
That's amazing.
And over half of those patients at the regional center that had it were over 60 years old. So I just got that information a little while ago.
I mean, that's, I think that's encouraging.
Those direct care staff really know how to take care of
They did. They're doing a wonderful job.
They absolutely do.
So our numbers are skewed because of the students.
Correct.
Right
Sure.
now, we're 52,000 in the county, but we're adding another, 15,000? So 62,000 is where our numbers really should be.
They should be, but what you really have to look at is the trends. You know, this is what Dr. Burks was telling us. She's like, you can look at individual case numbers, but more importantly, you look at the trends. The trend is in this 18 to 24-year-old age group. The trend is that they are happening at backyard parties and barbecues and weddings and family gatherings. The trends, you know, so you have to stop. You know, Jimmy and I were talking about today, he told me the active case number and it was down in the 200s and we were thrilled. And I was like, remember the days that we'd be like, oh, we have 3 new cases. And we just, you know, I mean, it was, you know, we've just evolved with the data and knowledge to get us to this point. But that's what we have to continue to do. And we are just in a very different season of this virus than we were in March and April. And in March and April, we were looking at positive case numbers, and now we have data to base things on. We've got 6 months of experience in knowing what works and what's effective. And we have, you know, hospitalization numbers that are very in check. And so what we need to do is keep on doing what we're doing.
Exactly.
If you remove the students from our numbers, and Jimmy was telling me this the other day, which I had not thought about, if you back out the student cases and you look at what is community spread, our community spread's going down.
Way down.
It's just that our student numbers are going up so much that it skews what that impact is on our overall community. So with that said, what I would like to do now is you have in front of you, the governor issued Executive Order 1522. And he issued it in 5 different sections. And I believe that the best way to go through this is section by section. Bart has kind of made you a cheat sheet that gives you what his changes are compared to ours. And since I think it's not going to be an all or nothing on any of them, I think it would be better to go through this sections A through E of the governor's Executive Order 1522. So understanding that Executive Orders 1496, 1500, 1505, 1508, 1511, 1514, 1516, 1518, 1519, and 1520 were all extended, okay? Which includes the face covering mandate, both inside and outside, were extended by the governor's order through the end of the month. So I just want everybody to know that is still in place based on the governor's order. So paragraph 1 in his executive order says retail businesses shall adopt a reasonable good faith measure to prevent the spread of COVID, including but not limited to limiting the number of customers in their stores at one time to no greater than 75% of the store's maximum capacity. Right now, serving Oxford safely, and the governor's last order said 50%. So what is your desire as far as raising that to 75%?
Mayor, I have a question.
Okay.
I can't remember all these percentages.
Yes.
When we talk about retail, are we taking out the essential businesses?
We are.
So Kroger and Walmart still don't have any restrictions?
That's correct.
Well, then, you know, the other ones are not a problem.
That's right. No, I think you're right. I think you're right.
I move we go with the governor's order on the retail.
All right, that's a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? All right. The next section is group gatherings. The governor's order changes these group gatherings. Remember that his order is to be applied statewide, and we can be more strict but not more lenient than his requirements. He says that group gatherings where social distancing is not possible would be an increase, well, that's really the same, of 10 people in an indoor space, but he increases it to 50 people in an outdoor space. His group gatherings where social distancing is possible, he allows 20 inside and 100 outdoors. I would say that he has certainly not driven through any of our apartment complexes to see what 50 and 100 people look like on a balcony. So let's discuss that. I'm not in favor of his numbers.
10 people, or group gatherings where social distancing is not possible, 10 people inside.
I think it ought to be the same on both, 10 and 50.
Well, I would.
We can't determine whether social distancing is possible or not. So what we did in our last one, so you know, is we said 10 inside, 20 outside. It's where we currently are, whether social distancing is possible or not, because people can.
Well, the problem is in the emails, some of the emails and points I've got is that these group gatherings, I think 25 outside would be, that'd be cutting the 50 in half. spread is happening in that age group and we're seeing these parties, I'd like to see the 25.
So it's 20 now, and we want to make it
Say 25. And we would leave indoor at 10. So is that a motion, Jason?
Yes.
All right.
I'll second that.
All right, so a motion and second on making the group gatherings, whether social distancing is possible or not, a maximum of 10 people indoor and 25 outdoor. I have a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Great, thank you. All right, the next section is restaurants. The governor's order increases the capacity from 50% to 75%. However, he still leaves in place the maintain 6 feet of separation between each party or group. So the tables must still be situated the same distance apart as they are right now. He raises the number allowed at a table from 6 customers to 10, and he says that self-service drink stations are now permitted. You know, I'll remind you that in our first discussions of serving Oxford safely, we determined that we were a lot more serious about social distancing than we were capacity numbers. We didn't include a capacity number in our first draft. The capacity numbers have come in with each of the governor's orders because we said what we want to be sure of is that there's no one closer than 6 feet, you know, seated between groups of tables. That is still included. So I'm not sure how much difference the capacity makes because they still have to be spaced that way. But I would rather us stick with our 6 people per table rather than raising it to 10.
I don't think we should stick with the 50% also, because if you have certain areas where a lot of people can pile in, it's gonna be extremely difficult for OPD to go in there and determine whether there's 75% capacity or 100%. It's just, for large venues, it's gonna be really difficult.
Well, do they still have to be seated?
They do, yes.
They still have to be seen. It's pretty much an oxymoron. I mean, you know, you're not gonna be able to do, restaurants in Oxford are not gonna be able to do the 75 and the 6 feet.
That's right.
But I also don't see any reason not to go ahead and go with it. I mean, I don't think it's gonna matter.
I think the 6 feet and the 6 people at the table, I don't think they get the 50% at that, so they might as well just follow the governor.
Up to y'all.
I think we should leave it like it is.
What do you think about number of customers per table?
6.
All right, and are y'all okay with the self-service drink stations being permitted? South Depot sent us a very good plan for that. That is what I would use in our Serving Oxford Safely. They had a very thoughtful plan. You can't refill from it. You can't. It has come to my attention. I hadn't paid that much attention, hadn't been in many restaurants, but that many have been using the self-service drink stations the whole time. So I don't know how many were closed down to begin with, but that is y'all's call. The governor's does now say that self-service drink stations are permitted. So are y'all in or out on that?
I think those are risky, even under conditions where there's no COVID-19.
Okay. Gonna need a motion from somebody of what?
So we're going, maintain the 6 feet, maximum 10.
No, maximum 6.
Maximum 6, self-serving buffet and food station.
Or prohibited.
So we're not changing that.
No, self-serving drinks.
So I move that we maintain what we have as far as restaurants, including the self-service.
Second.
All right, so that would be, everything stays the same at 50% capacity with the 6 feet of separation, 6 people per table, and no self-service drink stations permitted. So that's a motion and a second. Any discussion? All right, all in favor? Those opposed? Is that 3-3? I'm counting. I'm like, wait a minute. I would vote nay on that because I am not opposed to the 75% seating capacity. I think that the most important thing we decided in the beginning was that our 6 feet of separation be insisted upon. The 6 people at a table. The self-service drink station that Trey Horn at South Depot presented to us, I think is a very safe solution. It eliminates all the touch, there's no straws, no lemons, no any of that kind of thing. And there is something that you do to get the drinks out where you're not touching the thing. So I would vote no. So that would mean that there would have to be a different motion, I suppose. Is that correct?
Hey, Mayor, I make a motion that we follow the governor's orders with the exception that we go 6 people per table and the rest of it, maintain what the governor's order is.
What about the, drink station following the guidelines?
Yeah, I think they would need to
And
follow.
allow the self-service train station, that's in the governor's order.
With the guidelines.
With the
guidelines
strict guidelines. We're not just
Yeah.
saying they're open. As it reads here, it just says
Right.
they're open. I'm not good with that. I think we need to have our Serving Oxford Safely
Right.
guidelines in place, and I do not have that in front of me right this minute. But they were really good. Kara's not here to grab it.
I'll second that.
All right, so that's a motion and a second to 75% capacity, tables 6 feet apart, 6 people per table, and drink stations open with the stricter guidelines in place. All in favor? Any opposed? Still tied, okay. I will vote for that motion, so that motion carries. All right, section D, incorporated, okay, that allows for gyms to be open 24 hours a day. What are our hours right now, Bart? Bart's got the plan, the master plan.
It takes me a while to find. I think we should on that.
Yeah, it's like 6 to 10 or something.
I don't remember. The governor's allows 24 hours per day and 75% capacity.
What is our current capacity?
Like 10 people.
It's based on how many trainers there are, as I recall, is what our capacity is based upon. I think it's 10 people for every 1 employee, and our reasoning behind that, as I recall, is so that someone knew what things had been touched and utilized, machines had been utilized, and what have you.
If we leave that in place, then I don't have any problem with the 24 hours a day, as long as somebody's there.
Has anybody gotten any input from gyms? I haven't heard from any as far as.
Yes, because my wife works this morning, and I think we ought to allow the 24, but leave, the other requirements in place.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great. Okay, is there a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor? Any opposed? All right.
Can I ask what that was again? I'm trying to keep notes.
Yes, we're going to leave the capacity as it is now, which I believe is 1 trainer for every 10 gym participants. But we're going to allow the gyms to be open 24 hours a day per the governor's order.
I think we called it a trainer, but I mean, really it's just.
Employee,
It's an
employee,
attendant.
yeah, gym attendant, employee, whatever, I'm probably using the wrong lingo there. Okay, the next is reception halls and conference centers. The conference center is allowed to have no greater than 25% of maximum seating capacity if it is being utilized as a reception hall or conference center. If it is for seated dinners only, the governor says that there can be 75% capacity with tables arranged to ensure maximum 6 feet of separation. And seating at each table shall be limited to a maximum of 10 guests, which to me makes no sense. If you can have 75% capacity not wearing masks seated at tables, but you can only have 25% capacity and they're wearing masks the entire time and are socially distanced between family groups. But there you have it, that's what it says. So, and we can't be more lenient, we can only be more strict. So I don't know that there's anything to change there because that makes no common sense at all.
I think we do the same as restaurants. 6 and 6.
Oh, change it from 10 people to 6 people.
And it would
Okay.
basically follow like that restaurant.
Yeah, okay.
Is that a motion?
I'll make that motion.
I second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, so that addresses all of the different items that are included in the governor's plan. Are there any other issues that have been brought to your attention or that you're concerned about that you want to address? We'll revisit some of this when we get to our outdoor dining discussion. Bart is telling me that in our current Serving Oxford Safely plan, the gym restrooms are still closed to be utilized for showering and that kind of thing. Or we still want to keep those closed?
I don't know, is there anything in the governor's order about that?
There's not.
That's gotta be.
There was in some of his initial ones, but now he's just taken it down to just those 3 bullet points.
That's gotta be a pretty much hamper on them, to not have restrooms. We got
Yeah,
restrooms.
I'd kind of forgotten that was in the.
And I did too.
Do we have the restroom closed or just the showers?
Common areas with the exceptions of bathrooms shall be closed, so the changing rooms are closed, the bathrooms are open, the changing room, the showers are closed.
Okay.
I think that's good.
I mean, as long as the actual restrooms are open, then.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I know, me too. I was like, wait, I don't remember that. Okay, anything else, Bart, that you can think of that's been brought up in discussions that needs to be discussed? Again, I encourage y'all and the public to keep tracking along with these hospitalization numbers. When you look at our positive case numbers, I know it feels grim. I know it does. I still feel just as strongly that people that are asymptomatic when they've tested positive need to be quarantining. All you students who are not testing, but you know that you've been around people, please quarantine. Think about the fact that you could be spreading it to someone that doesn't have the same outcome that you will have. We have heard from lots of folks that the students have just taken to not testing so that they don't have to quarantine or don't have to isolate, and you're not doing your community any favors by taking that approach. And our goal here as a community is to get everything back open so that you and we can enjoy the Oxford that we all love. So, all right, we moved 17, deleted 18. I would ask you to authorize the reappointment of Chris Bush to the Oxford Park Commission Board.
Your resolution,
Oh, we do need to do the resolution. I didn't write that down, I'm sorry. So we have a 944th resolution, I'm kidding, the 11th resolution. And Pope, can you help me there?
Yeah, I mean, the Serving Oxford Safely plan as amended tonight, first someone ought to move to adopt that, if it's not adopted.
So moved.
All right, a motion and second. Any questions or discussions? We'll just incorporate the changes that we have voted on tonight. All in favor? Any
And
opposed?
then the 11th resolution, which adopts that amended and the governor's order, except for the changes in that plan.
Correct. And I want to make sure, and you may have to point me to the spot, Pope, where it addresses the face covering requirement. Numerous people have called us. The governor's let several of his orders expire before he's issued another one, or he's issued another one on the same day at 2:30 as one expired at 8 a.m. So we've gotten a lot of calls on those days from people saying, okay, so the mask order expired. Our mask order is in place until we revoke it.
Correct.
That is per our resolution, is that the face covering mandate is in place until this board revokes it. It's not based upon an expiration of the governor's order.
Well, what ours says is employees shall properly wear face coverings, ensuring face covering covers mouth and nose. All businesses shall monitor points of interest and prohibit entrance into the business by any individual over the age of 6 years not wearing a face covering. So, yeah, we still require it.
And it says until further order of the mayor and board of aldermen. There's not an expiration date.
That's right. Ours continues until
That's
further
right.
order.
For indoors, the governor's is what added the outdoor application of the mask. But for indoors, ours still remains in place.
Correct.
Okay?
Did somebody move to adopt the resolution?
That we had a motion and a second. All in favor? Any opposed? Great, thank you. So now, could I ask someone to reappoint Chris Bush to the Oxford Park Commission Board?
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to declare gymnastics equipment surplus at the Oxford Park Commission and authorize its disposal.
Sears refrigerator?
Hello, this is just all the old equipment that was in the old facility where the stuff that was not moved over and really don't have a use for it anymore. We have had some calls where people want to get on Gov Deals and search for it.
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. All right, number 22, Chief McCutcheon, request permission to allow Yoknapatawpha Arts Council the use of the City Hall Plaza for projection film screening for Oxford to the Ballot Box film screening with amplified sound event on Monday, September the 28th.
Yes, ma'am. So it will be a setup, and Wayne is here with the Arts Council. Setup will be at 5. The actual event will be from 7 to 9, and then cleanup from 9 to 10.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, and then Jeff, I understand there's an event added at 22A for September 25th and 26th.
This is Visit Oxford and a part of Tunes Around Town. We've already done one, which was, I think, the weekend of Labor Day. And this will be a continuance of that on September the 25th with live music, art demos, and tourism activity.
Move we approve.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to declare equipment surplus in the Oxford Police Department and authorize its disposal, Chief.
Some old car equipment that is unusable that we'll put on Gov Deals.
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? Request permission to approve a contract for a consultant to be used on an as-needed basis for the Oxford Police Department, Chief.
This is Walter Henry. He's a retired FBI agent here out of the Oxford field office. We've worked closely with him over the years, and he has some expertise in dealing with uses of force and investigating civil rights violations, along with he teaches crisis negotiations. So with our relationship with him, we would love to bring him in as a training and consultant role, and the contract's pending legal approval.
So there's going to be some changes to the insurance, and we think it's going to be with an LLC rather than the individual, but otherwise it's generally what's in your packet.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, thank you, Chief. Request permission to approve a list of budget amendments and reallocations for FY 19-20. Ashley?
Yes, what you see there is a list of pretty much housekeeping items, some reflecting changes in revenue up or down, depending on what it was, if we received more than we were supposed to or more than we thought we would. Some of them are decreases, ones that we knew we were not getting the revenue that we thought we were. Again, this is kind of a housekeeping item. Did anybody have any questions? Thank you.
Does it change our beginning cash?
It did. There were a couple of things. I know some of them were projects that Rihanna had mentioned that we did put some money in different places that were things that came up after, I think one of the last times y'all saw it, that was just a few of those additions. Matching funds, I think, for grants or something like that.
Right.
That was mine too.
Any other questions for Ashley?
Yeah, I mean, just, no, never mind. I'll ask her later. I move we approve.
Took my motion.
All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Next will be to adopt the budget for FY 2020-2021 for all city departments. Thank you all for your hard work on getting us to this point, all you aldermen, all you department heads, and especially Ashley Atkinson and Jesse Tollison, who's not here, but please pass that along.
I will.
To her.
Thank you, Mayor.
Oh, well, you are welcome. It was an interesting budget year for sure.
Made it a little bit easier, but then again, made it a little bit harder, not knowing,
That's right.
what we were gonna have.
That's right. Are there any questions? We held a public hearing at our last board meeting, and Ashley reported to me today that she's not received any other public, well, there was none received at that meeting, and she's not received any public input or questions regarding any of the budget items. Do any of the board members have any questions before we adopt this budget?
Isn't this the last day we adopt?
Yes, it is. And I would love to report that I was able to get the sales tax figure today, but it was not posted. I did look, and it had not posted yet. Usually it's posted by the 15th.
Yeah.
I was hoping I'd have that.
Okay, so we've got a motion and a second to adopt the budget for FY 2020-2021. All in favor? Any opposed? Awesome. And adopt the municipal mill rate resolution for FY 2020-2021 with the fabulous news that there will be no tax increase at all in the city of Oxford. Okay, there's a motion and a second, and Ashley, our mill rate will be?
The municipal mill rate's 31.22, and I believe the school is 61.51. Unchanged from last year.
61.51, that's correct.
Yep.
All right, we have a motion and a second to adopt the mill rate of 31.22 for the municipality, 61.51 for the school district. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Second reading and public hearing on a proposed ordinance to amend Chapter 42 of the Code of Ordinances regarding flood damage prevention. Brianna.
Thank you. As discussed last time, these changes are to bring us in alignment with the recommendations in order to maintain our community rating system status. So there were no requested changes at the last meeting, and I have not received any comment from the public or from any engineers through my office.
All right. So this is a second reading and public hearing. Is there anyone who would like to comment on this? Seeing none, do any of the board members have questions? If not, we will have a third reading and vote at our next meeting on this ordinance. Thank you, Brianna. Request permission to accept the annual material bids received September 10, 2020.
Yes. You received an updated packet tonight that provides a summary of all the bids received. As you can see, there's a large number. Russ came in at 4 yesterday morning, worked all day Friday to compile all of this from our bid opening date. We have provided the summary, and we recommend the lowest bidder be awarded with 2 noted exceptions, and these are for concrete materials and then also for the video monitoring, pipe cleaning, and root cutting services. The reason being, with the concrete materials, if we award to one plant, we call them and we say, we've had something come up, we need 3 yards of concrete, and they say, I can't get to you. We need to be able to go to another plant and get that. Yes, and that has been our practice for a number of years. So we would like to award that. There's $1 difference in the yard price, so it's no real difference in price. The second item for the video monitoring, pipe cleaning, and root cutting, the way we set this up to bid, we included an item for mobilization and a minimum service charge. And in setting it up that way, it allows the contractor to determine how much it is just for them to come to work, a minimum, so that we don't call them and say, I need 15 feet of pipe inspected. And
Right.
you know, that's $6 worth of work. Well, they're obviously not gonna mobilize a truck and crew for $6. But in doing that, and as close as our prices were to each other, it makes it impossible for us to determine who actually has the lowest bid. We would have to determine exactly how many feet we need to calculate. And then we also still have the issue of, if we have an issue, a pipe's falling in and we need an inspection, we call and they may not be available. And so we would request also for these services that we have both contractors on contract with prices to be
Sure.
able to, as we need, have those. And so I would request that if
just
you
makes
approve
sense.
that the motion include that notation for the record.
I move that we accept the low bids, except for concrete material, video monitoring, pipe inspection, and root filling, which will be awarded to other providers, as noted, in order to maintain service and perform required maintenance as necessary.
Nice. I second.
All right, all in favor? Any opposed? Thank you. Number 30 has been removed. 31, consider change order number 1 for AHS Construction for the NRCS Elm Street project in the amount of $19,738.59. The city share being approximately $3,950.
Yes.
Brianna?
And this is essentially for final quantities for concrete, and then we used additional Fleximat, that's the brick mat instead of riprap, at a property request to extend and have a more stable area. So it's essentially final quantities. And this is for our mitigation project, which is why we only have a 25% cost share with that.
Any questions on that?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Consider change order number 2 with AS Fournay Construction for the M-Trade Park Soccer Field Mitigation Project in the amount of $23,032. The city share being approximately $5,758.
Yes, and Brad asked that I present this. Engineering is managing the project on his behalf. So this is for additional fill quantity. When they got out there and were doing the work, they could add a little additional work, dirt, and then they can have one large field in addition to having the area for 2 small fields. So it provides additional use for the area.
Right.
And it's matching funds. They're adequate funds as this project came in a couple of $100,000 under the estimate and under what was budgeted. So we recommend approval of this change order.
So moved.
All in favor? Any opposed? All right, discuss applying for grant funds for the MDOT Transportation Alternative Program.
Yes. This grant award comes available every couple of years through MDOT. It's a Federal Highway Administration program that MDOT administers. And the program encourages applications for sidewalks, bike lanes, transit, signal items, and things like that. So what we would like to do is apply for projects. I've presented a list of 3 options. One being the Jackson Avenue Signal Improvement Project. We would like to take a section of Jackson Avenue and provide some upgrades to the hardware and software that will allow us to optimize our signals. It also has some features we want to pursue that detect pedestrians. We've received some concerns from the Pathways Commission that the walk time is not always enough, which is possible at any signal, but those are very highly used pedestrian signals. So this equipment detects that there's a pedestrian there and holds the light. So it increases safety and works that way for bicyclists also. The second project, the next 2 projects came off of our, what I call the unfunded project list. It's a list of projects that the board has identified over the years as important, and that we're just looking for funding mechanisms and ways to pursue the project. So one is a Park Drive sidewalk improvement project, and it would install a sidewalk on one side of Park from Thomas to Highway 30. The second project, it'd be the other sidewalk project, is Thacker Road Sidewalk Improvement Project, and that would include install sidewalk on one side of Thacker. We show it in 3 phases. You could choose to do 1 phase, 2 phases, or all 3. But the phases are broken up to provide from Garden Terrace to the park, and then from the park to American Eagle, and then from American Eagle to the end. And the end part has been what's recently annexed. So.
All right.
So there's a few findings that the board has to make, and I just want to go through those. First, the cost share, I've provided estimates based on a 75-25 split. If we meet all of our timelines, then that could be an 80-20 split, which is in the city's favor. If we miss our deadlines for providing plans and those things, the split drops down to 70-30. So I'm just kind of showing it at 75-25 right now. We can submit multiple applications. So we could submit all 3 projects, but I will need to have them prioritized by the board to say this is priority 1, 2, and 3. And then the board has to certify that there are no known foreseeable legal impediments existing that would prohibit completion of the project, and that the project complies with applicable codes, standards, and/or regulations required for completion. This certification must be executed by the mayor and must be in the form of a board order indicating the approval of the Board of Aldermen, and that's very specific language coming from MDOT that would need to be in the motion. They're all fantastic projects, and so if the board chooses to pursue applications, I just need to know which ones. And there are Funding has been identified in our intersection improvement account, to provide funding, including, we have to budget for the entire project amount through our budget, even though, because we have to pay it, pay the estimate up front. And so, so that's the reason. So I've budgeted $1 million right now in our intersection improvement account, because we have to budget to pay all of the bills and we are reimbursed. So our actual cost would be less than that, but I have to budget for the entire amount. And we have to say in our application that there are funds available, should we be granted the project. I'll also say that this is the funding source that provided for our East Jackson Sidewalk project that's going on right now, and also for our Bramlett project that we'll be opening bids for in October, so.
I'm seeing the cost for Thacker Road Phase 1 and Phase 2, but I'm not seeing a cost for Phase 3. Am I missing it? Okay, I didn't think so.
Phase 3, it is not there. Phase 3, because of the road nature in our annexed area, that Phase 3 was $1 million, roughly. I don't have the exact numbers, but it was
So
substantially
we'd be about
more.
50 grand.
So for our part, we would be
Yes.
250 in.
So if just phase 3 was $1 million.
Phase 3 alone is $1 million. It's a longer portion. You have to identify logical breaks, and it's also a
And so the
more
things
difficult
that
area
we
to
have
construct in.
to declare are, tell me again.
So we have to identify the projects we want to apply, the priority, and then there's a declaration that I provided in bold at the bottom.
Yeah.
Regarding the legal impediments and that you are just able to certify.
Okay,
these
so
things.
then a motion, I guess, would need to include a prioritization?
Yes.
All right, so you see that, let's see, that's 2, 3, 4. Give me some feedback.
I'm really gonna push for Thacker Road. There are like 1 million people living there, and none of them can get to the park because they have to walk in the street. And you can see from John's traffic thing that people are speeding there. The speed limit is 25 and they're going 42, which is substantial. But there really are probably, I don't know, you probably know, Preston, that there are probably 500 rooftops there with like at least 3 people in each building.
That's correct.
There's 550 something.
At least
Wow,
one house.
it was pretty close, yeah.
You got Soul
So-
Lake, Garden Terrace, Eagle Point, Oak Jar,
Right.
High Point.
So are you picking out a phase? Are you saying all 3 phases? I don't think we can afford all 3 phases, so
We can't
you,
afford all 3 phases, the phase 1 and phase 2.
You would like to apply for that as one project?
Yes, and that would be first priority of
Okay.
phase 3.
This is one of the things that the residents out there have been talking about for 8 years. And you can see the tracks where kids have gone from the neighborhoods to the gas station and back. And it's needed.
And Garden
Okay,
Terrace Park is a great park, but there's not very much parking. So people can't even drive there to use the park. So we really need.
so I'm hearing you say that you would propose that phase 1 and 2 be considered priority number 1.
Right.
And so that would be at a cost to the city of $256,250.
And I think Jackson Avenue should be priority 2, just from the amount of traffic and people that impacts.
I agree.
I agree.
I know Rick is not here, but he's gonna be pushing for Park Drive, right?
That could be number 3.
Well, yeah.
But we're deciding what to apply for grants for. I don't think we can afford. If we do, then we've used our entire budget.
If we are, so, and I'm gonna look to Ashley to help identify where there would be funds. So the intersection improvement account has funds that would cover, what we would have to do is come back to you and say, these are other projects we had identified for our intersection improvement project. Do you want to do those instead? And that's where we would come when we find out more. I'm hopeful that we would be awarded all of them,
I'm
but.
just a little hesitant for us to commit all these funds without our list of other projects in front of
But
us.
I'm confused, if we go ahead and put third one down there, does that mean if we get it, we have to go ahead and do it?
What that means is that we are not committed to MDOT until we sign an agreement with them. So we will have to, we'll have to state that there are funds available, and that would be just that there are funds available in the general fund, but there's no obligation from the city to MDOT until we sign the agreement, the actual agreement, so.
Even if we say Thacker is priority one and Jackson Avenue is priority two, they could come in and look at the application and reject number one and give us number two.
That's correct. They also could say, we have this amount of money, and this is a project that fits. And so there are a lot of things that go into their scoring system, but, so we don't know how we'll score, but.
I think we ought to go 1, 2, 3 as we're talking about Thacker, Jackson, and then Park.
Makes our money go a lot further to utilize it towards one of these projects that's paying 70 to 80% of it. So, you know, it's certainly a way to parlay our money into getting a lot more bang for our buck.
So even if we say the funds are available, we don't have to do it?
Correct. We just have to, what they don't
Because we
want
have
us.
said, I mean, Rihanna's telling you the funds are available.
Well, it's.
What are we gonna do with you, John? So, priority one would be the combination of phases 1 and 2 of Thacker Road. Priority 2 would be the Jackson Avenue signal improvement. Priority 3 would be Park Drive. Is that correct? All right.
So I'll make that motion.
And do we know that there are no legal impediments?
We, I'm gonna say yes.
Foreseeable legal impediments?
There are no foreseeable. We propose that the work will be done within the city right of way. Park Drive, there would have to be temporary construction easements, but there's nothing legally binding about these routes that prevents us from being able to do the work. So I would say yes, we know that. And I would ask, be sure that the motion did include all of that. When you made your motion, it did include all of that language. I thought so.
All right, so we have a motion and we have a second, correct? Didn't Preston second it? All right, all in favor? Any opposed? All right, great. Thank you, Rihanna. Consider a resolution of the City of Oxford, Mississippi regarding the licensing of city property not needed for municipal purposes, and authorize the mayor to execute licenses allowing specific restaurants in the downtown area to use municipal property. A few things. Bart will give you an update on a whole lot of changes that have happened since we last met, some because of meeting with restaurateurs, others because of restrictions that ABC put in place after the initial discussions. Once we got down in the weeds and started talking through the process and what it would look like, some things that we did not foresee in the beginning have changed. And I will add that the $3,000 that First National Bank contributed at the beginning of the meeting will go towards the expenses. We will divide it evenly amongst these restaurants to come off of their first month's rent. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Bart and let him kind of give you a synopsis here.
So in front of you tonight, you have a different resolution and a different map than you've seen before. These are results of our meetings with ABC. If you look at the map, the ABC, what our initial thoughts were and what we presented to you 2 weeks ago is that the parking space in its entirety would be what the restaurants would use for their outdoor dining. ABC has told us that that area for outdoor dining has to be contiguous to the restaurant. So that means the sidewalk could not go between the outdoor dining and the restaurant. So to make it work, we have to reroute the sidewalk outside of the outdoor dining area, which means we would install a ramp, we would put our barriers outside of the outdoor dining area, and then get people back up on the sidewalks. We looked at every one of the restaurants today that are interested in doing it. We can make it work everywhere with the exceptions of some difficulties at McEwen's, and I have not talked to Lee Coffin about it since we looked at it this afternoon. And there's even a possibility we can make it work there. What it does do, though, it costs us another parking space on each side of some of the outdoor dining areas.
In order to install the ramp, to make the added sidewalk, it doesn't give them additional space. It
That's
just,
right.
yeah, we just have to have the extra space to put in sidewalk and ramps.
So the resolution and that you have.
But we don't have to charge the restaurant for that, do we?
Oh, no.
No, I think that's
we're
still
just
public
utilizing
use.
it.
I'm speaking like I know, and that's what I've been telling myself all day. That's public use, so we're still using it. We're not allowing them to use it. The changes in the resolution you have and the changes in the leases that we will send back out, you had a copy of everybody's lease that we had done. We'll have to change those leases to incorporate a new description, which includes the sidewalk. We will also, this resolution in front of you tonight has the language in it about sidewalks. We have been very explicit with the restaurateurs and want you to be in your motion that these are licenses, they are revocable. So if something if it comes up that we can't continue, then there is a real possibility we might revoke these licenses. Also, because of some violations to our COVID regulations and to maybe even our alcohol regulations, it would be good if we were very explicit that in exchange for these licenses, that we want exemplary citizens and partners. And what I mean by that is if they're violating COVID, violating alcohol ordinances, then there's a very real possibility that you revoke the license, that you don't allow them to continue.
I would like to say even more strongly to you all, we talked to the ABC folks about this morning. We issued citations to 3 of our downtown establishments this past weekend who are participating in this outdoor dining. I would like to make it part of the discussion, if you all are for this, to say if you get a second violation, that your license will be revoked. We are trying to give these establishments larger occupancy loads by providing outdoor options. And so if they are not going to go by those occupancy loads indoors, then I believe that we should revoke the opportunity for them to have this additional occupancy. But that would be something y'all would have to decide. But I think it's important for them to know that we are very serious about the tables being spaced and people not being standing. And we are aware that happened in 3 different places this weekend that we issued citations to. If they receive a second one, I would ask you all to revoke their outdoor license.
I think we should consider it. I don't think it ought to be automatic. I think it ought to be considering the situation. My question is, and we've talked about it before, on outdoor, on some of the house parties and some of the other things, can we cite actually the participants along with the bar owner?
It would not be the participants' fault if the bar were not requiring them to be seated and they were all standing.
But if they're not following the directions of the staff?
They have the right to ask them to leave. That's what we're requiring convenience stores to do, retail, everybody else just.
They shouldn't have let them in the first place.
And then if they don't, then you're the trespass.
Policemen at every restaurant, police don't have the manpower, especially now that with the extended floor.
Okay.
And Mark, I understand that you may still want to see it, and it would come back before you would vote to revoke, but I'm not trying to dissuade your view of this. I'm just saying that it is difficult for us to police individuals in each restaurant.
I see what Mark's saying. I think a warning that you will be susceptible to having your license revoked is a better thing than saying it's automatically, because I'd like to hear the details of it before we say it. Because are we talking about just the outdoor seating license?
We are. But to me, it is a privilege that we're providing to help them increase their capacity. So if they are going to not,
But I think this
That's
board's
not wrong,
granting the license,
but
so this board has to revoke.
we will make more off those spots by people parking in them than we will make. So I mean,
I thought we got them approved.
we did, but we pulled and I don't have the number in front of me, but Matt can tell you what we make off, and it's $278 a month, I think, per spot, and we're leasing them for $192.50 because that's what the average of the two appraisals were. So it is, you know, I believe that 90% of our restaurants and bars are doing the right thing. And so I'm not concerned with it being something that happens to everyone. I think the majority of them are doing the right thing, but for those who choose not to, I don't believe they should have the privilege of adding additional capacity. But that's just my opinion. That's, if y'all don't want to add that, then.
And what I was raising though, it still is not, there's no way for us to automatically revoke it. You're granting the license, so you're gonna have to revoke
That's right.
the license.
I mean,
So it's gonna come back.
But I
to
think
you.
we should make that clear to them. If it is to be done, then I think that should be clear to them that that's the action that would be taken upon a not their first violation, but on their second.
And I wanna run through this map real quick.
And understand that most have gotten a warning before they've gotten a first violation. So by the time you're at your second violation, it's really your third time that you've been approached. So,
I want to run through the map real quick to let you know, to tell you about two changes and to let you see what we're looking at. If you look at start at the top left at St. Leo, this map will be amended in the attachment to the resolution that will show a roped off area from their back door to that St. Leo, to the property in that alley that they want to lease, and that gives them that, they're contiguous, but that lets their servers stay in their area also. You can see the annex rafters, tangos, funkies in the top, still working clockwise around. That whole parking bay would essentially be gone. There is a handicap space in that bay we will temporarily relocate, possibly to the other side of the street, but more probably in front of St. Leo's. There's an area in front of St. Leo's that was always set aside as a loading zone for the paper back when the newspaper was there. It's just a spot that we never went back and recaptured when the newspaper left. A little difficult situation with St. Leo Lounge and Julep Steakhouse, but we've got a solution. It does stretch it out a pretty good ways down that street, but that's 2 spaces per. Come down the page to Round Table, that's one of the situations I was
where
telling
did
you.
Roosters go?
Roosters, he opted out.
He opted out, okay.
If he comes back, I'll bring it back to you next.
No,
next
that's
week.
fine. He just was on the last list I saw, so.
The Round Table, this is one of the instances where you've got, because of the 2-space lease, it's going to cost you 4 spaces to be able to get the pathway all the way around. City Grocery, a little bit of the same situation. I think in reality we may lose 3 there instead of the 4 that's shown here. McEwen's, there is a potential that they will have enough space out into the parking bay for a couple of 2-tops, but because that's a narrow parallel spot and because of the step down, it makes it difficult to get a bit larger table there.
Yeah, that's where the sidewalk has that big step down, so it makes it really difficult to.
But we will, once we can get it laid out on the ground, we will modify this drawing as the attachment. Then in the middle of the screen, Sola, again, a situation where because of the pathway around, then we've got, it takes 3 spaces to get it to work, and we can tie back into the handicap ramp at the end.
That's good.
So.
I'd like them to push back on the sidewalk. We had talked about that, figuring out how to make that happen. To me, some of the safety concerns that we had about them being out in the parking places and move them closer back. If you look at this, I think it's from a customer safety standpoint and the server's safety standpoint, they're closer to the establishment.
So, Mark, do you just anticipate, like, say I'm looking at the Round Table, City Grocery and things like that, do you anticipate like say for example, City Grocery, you're looking at maybe 2 tables on the sidewalk and then 2 down below, like they're actually just one up there above the other?
Depending on the size of the table, yes. We got a little typical on the top right of that page that shows City Grocery's example. You know, it's possible they could work, 4 in there, 6-seater tables, but it's very easy for them to get 2 4-seaters and 2 6-seaters, and they're all different. Some of them have the little inset, like McEwen's, for example. They've got that entryway that opens up that they could probably get maybe an extra 1 or 2 in there if they were smaller tables.
By their front door on each side.
So there's there's multiple possibilities depending on what configuration and size of table the restaurant wants to go with.
And that's not rigged, is it?
Ricky is waiting in the lobby for executive session.
And one other thing that I'll just point out. Now that we're onto the sidewalk, this does make it all a little less certain and easy to understand what exactly was appraised and what exactly we're selling it for what, because we're not selling the whole parking place, but we are giving part of the sidewalk, and at some point, we just have to take the leap of faith here, just say that to you all.
Yeah.
I can't wait to go eat, so
If y'all wanna ask
upper or
questions,
lower level.
we can discuss all that in executive session, but, I'm not trying to prolong it, just pointing out that this added an extra layer of confusion.
Well, and Bart has worked miracles to get this ready for this meeting tonight. We met with ABC this morning to start working through things and yesterday afternoon, we kind of got the curveball, so Pope and John Mayo and Chief McCutcheon and Bart have worked tirelessly to get us to this point, because our hope is that our restaurants can go ahead and start doing this as soon as possible while the weather's perfect for it. And it's our understanding from ABC that if approved tonight and these restaurants get their floor plans to ABC, that hopefully by the end of this week, first of next week, ABC will be able to complete the process, and hopefully by the middle of next week, we can have it all set up with the, this has pushed us a little bit because we've got to have the ADA ramps that we didn't know until this morning would be part of this setup. So, but I believe Bart has that worked out. There's no we. Bart has worked that out today, and
We're not gonna be actual ADA compliant, we're just gonna put ramps.
yeah, no, we got to be ADA compliant.
Right, slope, all of that.
Yeah.
But I mean, a 6-inch curb's gonna have a 6-foot ramp.
That's correct, and that's why we're taking.
That's why we're having to
it's
lose
taking us
these
that
additional
wide
spots.
path.
Right, but I mean, that's okay, well, that's, from the pictures we saw, they were 6-foot ramps.
Well, if you look at, like, go to the annex and look, and it takes us, we're actually buying prefab ramps that we'll be able to attach to the sidewalk. But then we'll go from there down, we'll actually go over a flower bed east of Funky's, and then get us all the way back to the crosswalk. The difficult one. No, we're purchasing them, they're $130 a piece. They're prefab. They was cheaper than us doing asphalt, cheaper than us building plywood.
They explored all the different options from.
We will use them at.
Yeah, no doubt. Anyway, thank you, Bart, Pope, Chief McCutcheon, for pulling this off today. I greatly appreciate all the work that's gone into it.
So before you adopt the resolution, just do it noted that you understand the revocable license, the changes I mentioned to the map that'll be an attachment behind St. Leo's and in front of McEwen's, and then authorize the mayor to sign the leases that will be modified from what you've seen to include the sidewalk as opposed to parking spaces.
And so, are you interested in including any language about revoking of licenses if, I had that written out somewhere, but I can't find it.
The way the licenses read, Mayor, they say they are absolutely revocable at will. And if y'all wanna make your motion say what certain things will get you revoked, you certainly can. I just want it real clear tonight that at will means for no reason at all, that y'all can revoke it. And these are not property interests. We're putting out the public, we're moving our sidewalks, we're doing a lot to make this happen. And if it goes badly for a night or two, y'all, they need to know y'all can pull back on this.
But that's just it, they know that we can pull back.
I hope they do. We've got the revocable at will license, it's clear as day, but that's why I wanted it said tonight, as clear as it can be.
Okay?
Should we still add in there, just to let them know that if they do have a second violation, that their license might be revoked or is eligible to be revoked?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because you may, if it's the first
may not have the first
and they
one, yeah.
stack 1,000 people in there because they know they can make $10,000, you may want to revoke it then. And so I don't know if y'all want to put a trigger.
We don't really need to.
I just want everybody to know.
As long as, I mean, well, I make a motion to everything you said, except as long as they know that they are eligible to be revoked
told them.
And their leases state that, so.
License.
Licenses, I'm sorry, their license for this property states that, I'm sorry. All right, so there's a motion, a second. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Any opposed? Awesome. We will have outdoor dining in Oxford coming next week. So that is exciting. Thank you all for the work that went into making that happen. We have already accepted the $3,000 donation from First National Bank. And so at this time, I would ask the board to consider an executive session.
Second.
All in favor? Any opposed? Hey, Jason, on Wednesday, the 23rd, Eric Dahl asked if I would be welcome. I told him I would not, but that I would ask if they're all going to be successful first. It is an event down at the Pavilion. Richard Cross is the big MC. Interfaith Compassion Ministries is going to be somewhat of a fundraiser, but they're going to talk about counseling and stuff for people who are here in the community. And they want